Hi, everyone. My name is Rico Figliolini. This podcast is Urban Ebb, and it discusses culture, politics, everything that you can think of about the urban environment and the suburbia that we live in. And my great guest today is Elliot Brack. Elliot, thanks for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, no, this is cool. Elliot's been a longtime Gwinnettian.
50 years now.
50 years, way longer than me, double the span of that I've been here almost. And he publishes an online publication called Gwinnett Forum, which is a great informative piece. I learn something every week whenever I get the newsletter from you. Why don't you tell me, let's start off with a little bit about your background, you and your family.
Good. I am born south of Macon in Middle Georgia. Grew up in Macon, went to school there and at Mercer University. Then I went into the Army, spent 3.5 years in Germany defending your country. I'll come back to that if you want to.
Okay.
Then to the University of Iowa for a master's. Then to South Georgia and started publishing a weekly newspaper where I stayed 13 years. Then I came to Gwinnett in 1974 with the Gwinnett Daily News. Stayed with it until just before the New York Times bought it, and ended up my newspaper career as the associate publisher of the Gwinnett Extra of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Wow.
And then I had to retire because of age limits there, so I started Gwinnett Forum, an online moderated forum about activities in Gwinnett.
Mm-hmm.
I started it for one reason. Can you guess the reason?
And tell me.
Well, I had seen too many people retiring, doing nothing, dropping dead. So I didn't want to do that.
God forbid.
So I started Gwinnett Forum, not to make money, and I've never made money on it. I've got a decent retirement.
Right.
But I did it to extend my life, and so far it's worked for 24 years, and I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can.
Terrific. I feel the same way. I don't think everyone asks me when I'm retiring. I'm at that age where I could, and I'm like, no, it doesn't make sense for me to do that.
Now, if you're having a good time.
Yeah. You got to enjoy life.
And luckily I've had good health, so you stay with those two, and you're all right.
Yeah, appreciate it, especially through COVID and all that, too.
Yeah,
right?
we missed that one.
Yeah, that's cool. So, let's stick to, so your journalistic background runs deep and long.
That's all I've ever done.
Yeah, so is there a particular part of it is there a story from out of that might have inspired you further to do something than you otherwise would have?
I just fell into everything. I'm lucky.
Okay, all right. It's a good thing, I guess.
I've never sought a job that come to me, and so I'm happy.
All right. Well, when you started Gwinnett Forum, though, I know you wanted to start it because it kept you busy.
Yes.
But you've done a lot with that, I think, over the years.
Well, I have been surprised from the very beginning when I didn't know if I would get anything, I would know anything to put in there. But from the very beginning, I started getting material from other sources, from public relations people, from city officials, from all kind of places, and it just keeps coming. Even this morning, I didn't know what I was going to use as my lead story, and then we found something happening, the widening of U.S. Highway 120 to 4 lanes, and all of a sudden that's the story, and it just keeps coming in.
Yeah. I feel the same way sometimes. When we put out our magazines, it's like, what are we going to put in next issue?
That's right.
And life happens, right? So it just keeps coming at you. Is there anything that you found along the way doing Gwinnett Forum that, when people do online forums and stuff, you have to moderate, you have to do certain things?
It is a moderated forum. It's got to get past me to get in, yeah.
Okay. So have you found where, things sometimes got a little hairy around what subjects, what topics?
Well, mostly politics, of course. Okay. Lately there's been a lot about Mr. Trump in there. Yeah. But we've always had politics in there, and I always endorsed candidates ever since 2008 in all the elections.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
We become political some, but some of the better stories are about individuals, where you go out and meet a person and write about them, and that's fun.
Yeah. So do you lean more moderate, Republican? How's your politics?
I try to stay in the middle. I mean, I want to hear from Republicans and Democrats and independents as far as that goes. I must admit I'm a liberal. I accept that, but still, I don't want to shut anybody out who wants to say something. That's why I try to make it a forum of public opinion from different sources.
Based on the moderation you're doing, how are you seeing the politics right now?
What do you mean by that?
Are you seeing within your forum, and every forum's a little different, right? They attract certain types of people and stuff.
Right.
Are you seeing more Trump?
I get probably more reaction from Trump people, and I always try to print their reactions. I don't want to just to be known as a leftist or a rightist.
Right.
We seldom don't print a letter. We sometimes cut it shorter to just for space.
Right.
But we like to get to be able to show what people are thinking.
Okay. All right. Yeah, politics is tough, right? Because you have Trumpers, you have, I say Trumpers, sorry about that, MAGAs, and you have now, it used to be Biden, and now it's Harris, right? RFK Jr. every once in a while pops up, depends.
We haven't had much on the third-party candidates for some reason. People that we're dealing with just talk about the two main parties.
Even before Harris came in?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Other parts of the country don't.
But that's just with us in our little forum there.
Right. Are there particular issues that you like to cover in the forum?
Well, we've always covered the growth of Gwinnett because it just continues every year.
Yeah.
We get in more people in Gwinnett each year than larger than the 100 smallest counties in Gwinnett in Georgia. We continually get in about 10 to 15% every time you turn around. It looks like.
Are we still the largest populated or the second largest at this point? That's
we're second largest in the state, and it'll be a long time passing Fulton because they had a lot of. Fulton consists really, for you who weren't born here, of 3 counties. Did you know that?
No, I did not. Actually.
Well, 2 counties, Milton in the north and Campbell in the south, went broke during the Depression, and Fulton absorbed them. That's why you can get on a bus in a MARTA bus in North Fulton and go all the way past the airport in Fulton County to South Fulton County, about a 50 or 60 mile ride for one fare.
Wow, okay. I never knew that. And I wondered why the county stretched as long as it did.
It's really 3 counties, and so but now Fulton is running about 200,000 more than Gwinnett right now. And we may catch them someday, but with their bigger geographic area, we probably never will.
Yeah,
but we're still, when I moved up here, there were 100,000 people, and now there's 1 million.
So covering such a county, Gwinnett County, I mean, how do you do that?
Nobody does it, especially the traditional media, the Atlanta newspapers and the Gwinnett Daily Post down to 2 days a week. The Atlanta papers no longer have any reporter covering Gwinnett. Right. They're only looking at the hole in the donut. They're not looking at Cobb or Gwinnett or Fulton. And that's sad. And that's bad for government and bad for democracy, too, I think.
Sure. So are you covering, it's hard to be able to cover city councils.
I don't cover anything. People write me, and I don't have any staff. I don't have any reporters or anything like that. It's just me and editing what people send in to me. So that's not much coverage, if you ask me.
No, it's not. No, it's sad state of affairs, let me tell you. When and you're right, I've noticed the Gwinnett Daily Post. If it bleeds, maybe it leads, but mainly high school sports is what they
high school sports, they're 14.
Yep.
But now that's what, you bleeds where you leads. That is, chasing ambulances is what the television stations do. Yeah. They think just because someone got evicted or is a wreck or a tree fell on a house, that's news. They aren't covering hard news or investigative reporting of State House or the prisons or something like that. You just don't see that anymore. Why? Because it costs money. Chasing ambulances is cheap.
Yes. No, I agree with you. And the journalism, like the Woodward Bernstein type journalism, will never happen today.
You gotta. It's unusual. Now, sometimes the Atlanta papers, and I get concerned about, they will have a story and it'll go on and on and on, maybe 2 or 3 pages.
Really?
That's one reporter covering that. It's a waste of time. They ought to be out covering small stories, I think.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You know, that's long form journalism, I guess, and it's like extreme, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, so publishing Peachtree Corners magazine, Southwest Gwinnett magazine, we also get people submitting articles sometimes. But I tend to want to, you know, like you edit your materials that come in. They don't go straight in.
No, ever.
Okay. And we do the same.
Because I'm responsible for everything that's published. No matter you write it, but I'm the one that's legally responsible. That's
right.
why I read everything.
True. So you don't have any reporters, any freelancers?
Never have.
Okay, but you do have a stable of
We have
volunteer
several
right?
people who write often, and we
Okay.
appreciate them.
Okay.
And then we have the various public relations people of the cities and counties, county and cities of Gwinnett that send material. And then we have various people who head the nonprofits, and they have a staff, and they send us things. We get a fair amount of material, and I'd say we publish probably at least 3/4 of it.
Wow. Okay, that's quite a bit. And I got to say, when I get your email, the newsletter
Twice
every
weekly.
twice a week now, there's stuff in there I don't know, and it's like, wow, okay, I didn't know that one. And I could say that there's probably a third of what you put in there that I'm not familiar with, that I'm learning from.
I'm learning
from you.
too when we publish this. I'm learning too. You're not by yourself.
Okay, good. I don't feel so bad then. There are what I like too. I think you have a feature that does, find, where is this picture? Where is this image from?
We started the mystery picture about 5-6 years ago, and we have been amazed at two or three things. Gwinnett people travel, and it's hard to slip a picture past and nobody get it because somebody will have been that place before and they'll respond. We get we have a cadre of 4, 5, 6 people who respond to every one of them. But this morning, the first answer I got that was the correct answer is from a guy I'd never heard of before. I mean, one of our readers who was there.
Wow. Is there any of them that struck you that you remember?
Well, I remember sitting in the plaza in Salamanca, Spain one day, and I thought, hey, this would make a good picture, and so I snapped a mystery photo for it. The next issue I put it in, 4 people got it, and 2 of them had been there the week before.
Oh, really? Serendipity. That's good. Amazing. The world is not as large as we think, apparently.
And the hardest pictures, though, usually if we snap a picture in Gwinnett that hasn't been published anywhere before, that's the hardest for our people to get, but we just don't. I don't see enough good pictures in Gwinnett to click.
I've seen some stuff through Georgia, though.
Yeah.
Because Georgia has great landscapes, great places.
We can't publish it if it's copyrighted, though. We have to. The
Right.
pictures all come from readers that have been to these places.
Individuals, yeah. Do you feel that you want to do? I know, Gwinnett Forum is the thing you do on a regular basis. Is there anything else you want to do? Like, would you have chosen to do something else besides Gwinnett Forum, or is this?
I just fell upon it. I don't know. It's an idea. When I started it, my son said it wouldn't work. And my son is important. That's because while I don't have any staff, when I finish it in a Word document, a simple Word document, I send it to my son. He manipulates it and puts it out on the internet. I don't know how to do that.
Oh, okay.
But he said, I don't think this is going to work. A few years later, he had one like it.
Did he? All right. I'm sure that the traffic you get to the website is pretty good.
Well, we think so. We think we have about 10,000 readers, but in a county of 1 million people, that's not very many.
No, that's not actually. But you're not on social media either, I don't
I
think,
don't play with that stuff. I don't understand it, and I don't even. I do the simple Gwinnett Forum, and that's it.
So if no one subscribes to your newsletter, they really wouldn't be able to get to you unless they know the website.
Well, it's on the web. If they wanted to go to GwinnettForum.com, they could read it. But we like to send it by email, like you, to people. They've shown interest in it. Okay, here it is, right in front of you, twice a week.
Right. You decided, being here half a century, to put it that way, I guess, you decided to do a Gwinnett history book.
Yeah,
That's
well,
a big undertaking.
well,
That's
it was. Let me go back and explain some things. We used to do a tour of Gwinnett. I say we. I started out with Wayne Shackford in 1975. We did our first tour of Gwinnett. And over the years, we started doing them twice a year, fall and spring. And later on, when Mr. Shackford joined state government, we had other people helped us narrate the tour. It was a 6-hour bus ride around Gwinnett, and one person can't do it. You need help just for relax your throat.
Sure.
Anyway, we've had Brooks Coleman, we've had Jim Steele, and in the last few years of the tour, we had Wayne Hill, the former chairman of the commission, who was no longer on the commission. And I learned a lot from those two people, well, Jim Steele and Wayne particularly. But as we would get off the bus each day, they'd say to me, "You ought to do a history of Gwinnett." I said, "Look, I want to see it in print tomorrow. I don't want to see it in print 3 or 4 years from now. I'm a newspaper man, you know." But finally, after I retired, I got to thinking that maybe I ought to do a short history of Gwinnett. I wanted to do a 100-page history of Gwinnett. So I sat down one Friday afternoon up on a porch in the mountains, and I wrote for most of the afternoon. And when I had finished it, by the way, if I needed a date, I left it blank. I was just writing from memory, you might say.
Sure.
So anyway, I read through what I had written. I'd written 50 pages, and I remember shaking my head. I hadn't touched the subject, you might say. I had just skimmed over it. And I said, what am I getting into? So what I got into was 3.5 years before we finished that book. And on 2 or 3 occasions, I thought I had finished it. I forgot this. I'd have to go back and do that one. It ended up 850 pages.
Wow.
This covers basically from Gwinnett's growth from 1950 to the present day, or 2008 when we finished it, because we had 2 other histories up until that time. And I wanted to show the fast growth. We cover some of the early history, but that's just a skim of the bunch. But I'd known most of the people who I was writing about. They knew me, and I had some credibility, and they had some credibility. So I started writing, and it took forever. But we published it in 2008. We republished it 2 more times, so we still have some copies left. And this is not inexpensive. We sell it for $75. If you want a history, I'm the only one that's got one.
Wow. Sounds like it could be one of those college textbooks.
Well, if you want the history of Gwinnett recently, it's in there. By the way, we also published another book. This is 366 facts about Gwinnett. This came about by the chairman of the county commission, Ms. Nash, called me one day and says, "Can you come up with 366 facts about Gwinnett?" And I said, "Why that number?" She says, "Well, we want to publish one on the first day of the bicentennial and another one on the last day of the bicentennial." And I said, "Well, Charlotte, I don't mind doing that, but how about let's put it in book form so we at least keep those facts out there a little bit." So the first one we published was a red book. This one is I changed the colors when I republished it to blue. And the idea here is that this one is new and improved. It's new because I had to go back and update the facts in there, how many students were in school and things like that. But it's improved because my service station manager told me, he says, "You know, that red book is a pretty good book, but if I want to tell somebody about it, I have to go through the whole book to find that fact. Can't you index it?" So I indexed that one, making it improved, you see. Now, let me tell you the rest of the story. But one of the first persons I handed it to went straight to the index and told me, "I'm not in there."
A little egotistical. That's funny. Can they find copies of this online?
No, that's not online. Now, we've sold a few. We got a few left, but not many. We're about out of that with the second printing.
Wow. When was the last printing of this then? When was that second printing?
Last year.
Last year. Wow.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And there's no digital version online
No.
they can, a PDF of a sort that they can order digitally?
What?
No PDF that people can order online?
No. You can order the history book on PDF, but not this one.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Anyone that thinks they want a copy of this, which is a great. I was just thumbing through it. It's interesting, some of the stuff that I've not.
The fact I like, and I forgot the number, it's such a significant fact and an insignificant fact, really. How many baseballs the Gwinnett Stripers use in a year?
Well, that's interesting. How that would be. How many?
It's in there.
I'm gonna have to look through it. Here's another interesting fact. The Harlem Globetrotters basketball team, anyone that's old enough to know that one, is actually home based in Peachtree Corners.
That's right.
I didn't know that until just like a few years ago. I was like, man. And the same thing, Peachtree Corners has the company that owns the salvage right to the Titanic.
Yes.
Is actually based in Peachtree Corners as well. So a lot of interesting stuff in Gwinnett County, not just...
it gets more every day.
Yeah, it's just... when I first moved here in 95, and I moved here because the Olympics. I moved here because Gwinnett County...
A lot of people moved here because of the Olympics.
Yeah, because the county was the fastest growing in the nation, according to Money Magazine. So we came down here, we looked around, we bought the first and only house that we have here in Gwinnett County in Peachtree Corners. Because of the school system.
Yeah, a lot of people do that because of the school system.
Yeah. So Gwinnett has a lot of history to it, and maybe not all of it. It's funny how some people, the old timers that I speak to every once in a while, they'll tell me like, oh yeah, I remember the day my parents used to tell me they would live in, I think, Fulton County or Milton maybe at the time, and they would say, if you're going to the other side of Gwinnett County, don't you dare go through Gwinnett County. You go right around the other side of that county.
Well, let's go back to, Gwinnett used to be a lawless county.
Apparently.
When I was coming up from South Georgia, I was told, said, boy, don't go up there. They'll shoot you up there. And there had been two major instances of lawlessness in that one time the 3 deputy sheriffs were killed here in Gwinnett County with their own guns by people who were stripping automobiles of their parts, and the deputies ran up on. Somehow the bad guys got their guns and killed them. That was 1984, 1964, a very bad story. And then in 1988, a lady who was a student at Emory was kidnapped and buried alive 83 hours underground in Berkeley Lake.
In Berkeley Lake?
Yes. And they caught the guy. He demanded a ransom. They ended up catching him, and they knew he told them where he was buried, and they brought him up here. Wow. And they had to search Berkeley Lake. Now, this was before Berkeley Lake was built up at all. All those houses you see around the school there. It was a pine forest. And a guy who worked at a Rock 10 plant right near there says at 10 o'clock in the morning, every policeman in the world seemed to show up over there, and they were combing the woods for Barbara Mackle. They finally found a grave, and everything stopped. No one had brought a shovel.
No.
They had to go back into Norcross and Ivy Hardware and buy a shovel.
God.
Meantime, the guys who were left there are digging with their hands to get her out.
Was she alive?
She was alive. The guy the guy and a lady who had abducted her had put drugs in the water, and so for some early time she was not aware of what was happening. They'd also put a flashlight in with a battery, but eventually the battery went out, and she was an heiress from down in Florida, and she didn't say anything to the press about it until finally, several years later, a reporter for the Miami papers got her to tell her story, and that's the name of the book is 83 Hours Till Dawn.
Wow. Gwinnett's famous for really dastardly things.
This was 64 and 68. I came up here in 74, and it was still... By the way, the sheriff who went to prison did not go to prison for moonshining. He went because he owned 1,000 moonshine jugs.
You're kidding.
He went to prison.
It's like someone going to prison for tax evasion, not for the crime they were evading, maybe.
Right.
Okay. So that's Gwinnett really, it's interesting, it's how it's changed.
Oh, it's so diverse now. And
yes.
I remember when the first Chinese restaurant, we came from Lawrenceville, where I was living then, to Jimmy Carter Boulevard on the east side, where China One was a restaurant. That was our first China, and the first Mexican place was in Duluth called Acapulco, and
Authentic Mexican?
what?
Authentic?
Yeah, authentic. Both were authentic. But of course, we're just covered up with any kind of food you want now. You can go just down the street and get it.
Yeah, someone that's funny because someone else was complaining. There's a sushi bar that will be opening in the Forum in the plaza, the new area that they just built. It's a 2-story deck thing, so they'll be opening soon. And they're a sushi bar place, and they were like, "We have too many sushi places in the city." It's kind of funny when you think about it. When I moved here in '95, coming from Brooklyn, the things I didn't, unless you really maybe went into certain parts of Atlanta, couldn't find a really good bagel place, couldn't find a good pizza place, and even the Chinese food was a different type of Chinese than up in New York, because there's Szechuan and there was another one. And so it was funny. I mean, it took us a while before we really found good ethnic food.
Now you find it easily.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. A couple of restaurants out there say they're Italian. I know my father-in-law loved the Olive Garden, and he was from Sicily. And
I can't stand it.
he was from Sicily, and he loved it. That was his favorite place to go to. And it was like, "You don't want to go to Maggiano's?" And he's like, "No, I like the Olive Garden. I like the bread."
My daughter was a waitress at the Olive Garden, and I didn't like the taste of their food.
Yeah, I mean, there's other Italian restaurants that are legitimately Italian, but they smother their food in sauces and stuff, and you don't see that in Italy, really.
I remember when we spent a month on a vacation in Florence, Italy. I mean, that food there is so delicious, it's pitiful. I mean,
can't find the same stuff here.
No, it's not like it is here.
No, yeah, they ban stuff in Europe that they feed us here, so it's not the same world. So you've written a couple of books. You've done the Gwinnett Forum. Do you see yourself wanting to do anything else? I mean,
No, I don't want to do much more.
You could do more. Are you kidding? The whole idea of doing stuff is to stay alive, right?
The Forum keeps me busy, and it keeps me busy enough, you might say.
All right. Well, that's good. Anything you want to say that we haven't really touched upon?
Well, I will say this, and I don't mean to be maudlin, but we lost our youngest daughter 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
She battled cancer for 6 years, and yet she was leading 20 students in Greece 4 weeks before she died.
Before she died, really?
She just kept going. She was always positive about this. She thought she was going to beat it, but of course, it takes everybody. It looks like it's in its way.
Yeah.
But that's been tough. We've got 2 other children, but watching her go down was the hardest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I think for a parent to see their child go first is not something a parent wants to see.
No.
So.
No, it just stays with us all the time.
Yeah,
but we've had a great outpouring of comment and thought and cards and food, and people have just been wonderful. But it hurts.
Yeah, I would imagine. Do you? When did you lose your parents?
Oh, they've been gone quite a while. Both my father and mother. Maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago, yeah.
Okay. Are you an only child?
Yes, I am. I had a brother who was born and died 3 months later, but and I remember my father taking that small casket and walking out our door and us going to the church. I mean, I was about 4 years old at the time, and I remember that.
Wow.
By the way, when was the first time you voted? What age were you?
I think I was in my early 20s. It was either 20, 21, something like that.
I actually voted when I was 4 years old.
No, you didn't.
I was staying in South Georgia, Middle Georgia, with my grandmother, and her son lived with her. And it was voting day, so we went to the Turkey Creek voting precinct in Wilson County. And my grandmother stayed in the car, and I walked with my uncle toward this one-room courthouse, as they call it. And by the way, I remember as we were walking up there were tubs of soft drinks all over the place and ice. And I remember one of the first things I remember was a man said to me, "Son, do you want a drink?" And I said to him, "Sir, I don't have a nickel." He says, "Boy, today you don't need it." He handed me a orange knee-high, I think. Anyway, my uncle went in and got his ballot and got one for his mother, and this is violating law, but took it out to her car.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she looked at the ballot for a while and said, "Here, boy, you vote." So on the hood of that car, I marked that ballot. Now, I don't know who I voted for, but I suspect I voted for Franklin Roosevelt. And I suspect I voted for Eugene Talmadge.
Okay, just like stories like that. I can imagine other counties then. That is like going back. That's amazing.
And nobody said anything.
No, hey, and
everybody knew each other.
How big? Yeah, well, that's the problem.
Probably
with small
200
counties.
people in the whole precinct,
And how many people in that county?
Probably less than 10,000 or something like that.
So if you, that's funny because it's just like you would think about that, and I think about like Brooklyn and voting over there, and people, today would say, "Oh, people vote that shouldn't be voting."
Yeah.
A 4-year-old voted like a long time ago, but yeah. So but you find things like that all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Missing ballot boxes.
Oh,
It
I
happens,
remember
right?
when I was in South Georgia, it was a real controversial election, and this candidate's father, after the vote counting was over, the courthouse was locked down. This is a county of about 20,000. The courthouse was locked down, but the father stayed outside in his pickup with a shotgun all night in case anybody tried to sneak in the courthouse and do something.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's okay. There are people that do that today sometimes.
Well,
They'll sit outside voting areas though, and
I got
and
introduced.
write to carry states.
I got introduced to politics when I was in South Georgia within the first 6 months when my partner's father-in-law ran for sheriff because the crooked sheriff had gotten killed. And all of a sudden, I'm in on the inside drafting the strategy and all that
How
stuff. I
old-
didn't mean to do that.
How old were you?
Oh, I was 26, 27 years old then.
Okay.
And I planned to be an objective newspaperman, but then all of a sudden I couldn't be called objective because I was helping
Yeah.
them get elected.
I wonder how much different that. When I grew up, politics was the late 70s, early 80s for me, really. A Democratic machine, Brooklyn County. I worked for, the county was broken down into sections, right? Districts, if you will. So I worked for the district leader in that area, and his name was Tony Genovese.
I remember that name,
No relation to the
but still, Genovese. is a
yeah,
good
yeah.
name.
So, but even that family's no relation, from what I understood, anyway. But the politics of doing stuff, the suppressing votes, putting out flyers that were essentially not meant to stop people from voting. Well, it was meant to stop people from voting for a candidate.
Yeah,
right?
for a candidate.
Right. So suppressing the vote, if you will, is what they call it.
We call that just politics on South
Yeah, different words, different places. Everyone was doing different. But I did learn quite a few over there, and I even tried to. I was called to jury duty. I was like 20-something, and I didn't want to go. I had work, and if I didn't work, it's an hourly job. So I went to my district leader, and he said to me, "What do you need?" I said, "I have this thing. I don't want to go to jury duty. Can you take care of it?" He crumples it up, throws it in the waste bags, and says, "It's done." And I looked at him, and I'm like, No, seriously. And he's like, do you think anyone is going to come out and say you didn't go to jury? There's millions of people here. They don't do that stuff. And I was like, okay, well, this is the way it goes. Politics is...
Have you ever been on a jury?
Yes, I've been on a jury, although not in the South here. When I was called to jury duty in Gwinnett County, they asked me, where are you from? I said, I'm from Brooklyn. They said, why'd you move here? I said, well, to get away from the crime. I was not picked on the jury duty, and I was never since actually called back. So
I've been on a jury one time, a murder trial.
But were you called and actually sat on the
I
jury?
sat on jury, yeah. We were sequestered, too, for 4 days.
Wow. How'd that go?
Well, the current district attorney the district attorney at that time did a bad job. We kept waiting for him to ask one more question, and it would slam the guy. He never asked it, so it was a hung jury. Later, they tried him again, and he was convicted.
Yeah, okay. Well, good experience, I guess. Let me ask you also about, you mentioned you were in the armed forces a while back. Can we touch on that a little bit?
Yes.
How old were you? Were you legitimately the right age?
Yes,
You hear
When I
stories
was
of
coming
this.
along, you had the draft. And so while I was in college, I joined the National Guard.
Okay.
And went
How old were you?
17,
Well,
18. Went to camp at Fort McClellan, Alabama for 2 years. Then this is when I was in college. And when I got in the third year of ROTC, you could no longer be in the Guards. You had to transfer to the reserves. And I stood 2 more years there while I was in college. Then I was commissioned a first lieutenant, and I was sent overseas to Germany. They said, sign here and your wife can go with you.
What year was that?
That was 58 we left.
Okay, 58.
No wars going on there.
Right. And your wife was able to come with you?
My wife went with me. We sailed on a ship over, landed in Bremerhaven. The day we landed in Bremerhaven, we didn't know it, but my wife's father was killed in a tractor accident. A tractor ran over him when he was trying to open a gate.
Wow.
Anyway, she had to fly back immediately and all that stuff. But anyway, my job, I had a great job. While I was a part of the post operation, we ran the post, the military policemen, the doctors, the post office, the PX, the commissary. I was the commissary officer. I ran a supermarket for the post office, for the government. And I also ran a Class 6 store. What is that?
I have no idea.
Liquor.
Ah.
I was a
And you
liquor
were how
and
old?
the commissary
Well,
officer.
you were probably the right age.
22 years old,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And the Army gives you the job. If you don't do it, that's all right. Them, they get rid of you and put somebody else in there, But I was 3.5 years in Germany. We supported the 3rd Armored Division. These are the guys who, in the little towns around us, were barracked there, but they would go out in the field and get muddy and coal and all that stuff. I didn't have to get muddy and coal, I had a great job. It was sort of like a training or for a master's degree or something like that, but it was management, really, because I was managing about 60 German people, and I had a sergeant and a PFC and me, and all the rest were German.
Did you speak German?
I took German in college from a professor who mumbled. Mumbling German, we didn't learn a thing, I don't think that. But when I got over there, since I was working with all these people, I got a pretty good accent in German. I could speak it a little bit. Now, that's only half of it. You got to hear it. I couldn't hear it. But my wife could hear it better than I could. She never even took German.
Oh, that's funny. German is very guttural
By the way,
language, too.
I had one famous customer while I was over there that we fed Elvis Presley.
Was he in the armed forces? then?
He was
Yes,
drafted
was.
like everybody.
Yeah.
And he went in as a PFC.
So
He
you
was-
got to see him?
He was a good soldier in those times. He wasn't into his problems, you might say. His mother had just died, so he brought with him overseas his father. He paid for his father to come over. So his father was his official dependent. Elvis came in the commissary 2 or 3 times, but girls would mob him. It made him crazy. But Mr. Presley, we got to know pretty good. He was a good old gentleman.
Nate, all these little things that go on in life. I'm surprised, actually, when you came back, you didn't, work for, Ingalls or, become higher up in those
I had
food
no
supply-
idea I wanted to go be a supermarket manager. I came back with this distinct idea directly to go to college for a master's. I went to the University of Iowa to get out of the South. I'd just been in Germany 3.5 years, but I would get out of the, but I always knew I was coming back home. I had no idea about staying away.
This has been a great conversation. Great to hear about Gwinnett County. Great to hear about your background. Sorry about your daughter.
Thank you.
We should do this again, I think. Maybe even pick a topic or a time that we can.
We'd probably talk about the same thing, wouldn't we?
There's more about Gwinnett than, most people don't even know this. When I came here in '95, I mean, there were a lot of farmers that owned 100, 200, 300 acres
Oh, yeah.
that became millionaires
That's
because
right.
of development.
They just held on to the last
Yes.
and bang, all of a sudden.
And and these farmers were making maybe household income 50,000 at the time.
Oh, I doubt that.
Yeah.
25 probably.
I bet. And they would get these developers coming up to them saying, if you give us these 100 acres, for an option, and we get it developed, rezoned is what it was, right? You could be a millionaire, and we could have, 300 houses on these 100 acres or something.
Many people retired on that, yeah.
Yeah, quite a few people, actually. In fact, going back through history, there's been county commissioners, or one in particular, that had some issues also, I guess. But there may be other, corruption and stuff.
But generally speaking, since I've been up here, we've had commissioners and developers too. Developers were big in Gwinnett when I was first up here.
Yeah.
But we've had these people who were native, for the most part. They wanted to make a buck. They did. Many of them got pretty wealthy.
Yeah.
But they also wanted to sell you another plot of land so they couldn't clip you too much the first time, or you wouldn't come back, and so, but we've had pretty good commissioners up here. I've been real pleased.
Yeah, there have been really good commissioners. I agree with you. And
one or two bad ones, but
yes, and the bad ones took a little while to find sometimes.
Yeah, we
sitting
got rid of them one way or the other.
Yeah, but I remember one where he was literally sitting. If anyone connected the dots, they would have seen it 2 years before, but they didn't. But yes, county commissioners have been great. The Parks Department, unbelievable. I mean, the Gwinnett County Parks.
And our water department is unbelievable.
And that too, yes. So we've had really good quality, national award-winning quality work here in Gwinnett County.
And our leaders have been national leaders too in the cities and the county commission. It's amazing. We've had some good people up here.
I mean, we even have a good governor now. That, Democrat or Republican doesn't matter. I mean, Kemp has been a decent governor as well, it seems.
Better than average.
Yes, I would say. So we've been talking to Elliot Brack, Gwinnett Forum. Appreciate you joining me, and we'll probably have you back again. But thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you, Elliot.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
you being here.
Now this